the truth, the half-truth, and nowhere near the truth. The idea of the truth is a commodity that the narcissist uses to manipulate, to assert control, to nullify threats to control, to utilize it for the purposes of the extraction of fuel, character traits, and residual benefits. It's important, however, to understand the concept of the truth so that you can then understand how this is utilized by the narcissist. Let's take, for instance, that you and I have visited a castle. You're having a lovely day out with HG here. And as part of an experiment, you and I are wired up to a computer. And it registers our brain activity linked to what we are actually seeing. And at one point you go, hey, HG, look over there in the corner of this particular chamber in this castle. There is an old lady wearing a grey shawl, and her head is under her arm. It's the Grey Lady of Castle Grayskull. And the computer that you're hooked up to registers that you're actually seeing something there. And I say to you, I can't see anything. And the computer that I'm hooked to registers that I'm not seeing anything there, other than the cavernous space of the chamber in which we are stood. You are adamant, but HG, there's a ghost. And I'm going, there's nothing there. Nonsense. And you might say, HG, why are you saying you can't see it when it's there? And I say to you, dear listener, dear viewer, why are you saying that there is a ghost there when there patently isn't? Stop telling lies. Which of us is right? We both are. Because in our own realities, we are seeing a ghost in one instance and no ghost in the other. We are both correct. If it were the case that 99 other people accompanied us, and they all confirmed that they saw a ghost and their brain activity registered that that was the case, then it would essentially be confirmed that a ghost existed because the majority perceive it that way. And therefore, what you see is the majority perspective, because you and many other people have evolved in a similar way to see the world in a particular way. We see the world through a different lens, as I've explained elsewhere, through a lens of control. Most narcissists don't realize this, and they don't realize that they're seeing the world any differently to you. And therefore, when behaviors and instances and occurrences pass through this filter, it's seen in a different way, it's interpreted in a different way by the narcissist because of the filter of narcissism that is across the way that they see the world, prompting a different response. And that filter is linked to the issue of control. You're either threatening that control or you're giving us that control. You don't have that filter, we do. Accordingly, take somebody, for instance, who suffers from chromesthesia and they see sound as colour. People who do are very much in the minority. Most people don't see sound as colour. That then becomes the norm. And if you see sound as colour, that is in effect described as a disorder because it's seen as not functioning in the normal way. And therefore, when it comes to a perception of the truth, it is a perception. It's an interpretation. So, for a moment, let's consider those that maintain that the Earth is flat. Now, there'll be a small number of people who will know that the Earth is a globe, but will still maintain that the Earth is flat because they just like being awkward, and they know that they're telling a lie. But many of the individuals that believe that the Earth is flat have a complete conviction in that regard. They reject entirely that it is a globe, and they are described as science deniers because the majority perspective is that the Earth is roughly a globe, a slightly squashed one, but a sphere. That there are photographs that show this, that there are recordings taken from space demonstrating that the Earth is indeed a globe, and a whole host of other evidence that supports this. So if you were having a debate with a flat earther and you said, no, look, the Earth is a sphere, and they go, no, it's not, it's flat. No, this is a sphere. No, it's flat. And of course the argument would go backwards and forwards, your view versus their view, based upon your different perceptions. So you would then produce a photograph and you would say, look, here you are. This is a picture that taken from space which shows the curvature of the Earth. And you can see that. And of course, the individual that you're talking to would also be able to see that that photograph shows that there is a curvature. That individual isn't then going to turn around and go, oh, actually, you've persuaded me. What'll happen? He'll say, that's a fake photograph. So then you say, well, actually, I have an affidavit from the person that took it swearing that it is an accurate photograph. And that individual, again, would say, the affidavit's made up. You won't be able to persuade them because the relevant filter that they have upon their perception of the world, namely that it is flat, and who knows that it might be balanced on 4 elephants that then are stood upon a turtle that's going through the cosmos. But their perception is, this is a flat Earth with a wall of ice around it. And whatever you show them to tell them to the contrary will always be rejected because they have an honest perception that the Earth is flat. And whatever evidence you put, their brain in essence rejects it. That's a fake photograph. That affidavit isn't genuine. The video recording, it's faked. They have a different perspective to you. And of course, because they're in the minority, they're generally seen as being wrong. And this also takes us into the field of conspiracy theorists, which has an interesting interaction with narcissism, and I'll be talking about that on another occasion. But it is important to understand that the concept of the truth is a matter of perception. Because even where you will say, look, here's a video of this happening, it's recorded what's happened, that's the truth. If somebody has a different perspective, they will just say, that's an edited video, or it doesn't show the whole story of what's gone on. They will not accept it because the way that they see the world is through a different filter. They have an alternative perspective. And it's very important for you, as a victim of a narcissist, to understand that the narcissist sees the world through this different filter, and it affects their behaviours. Now, this when comes to the issue of the use of the truth against you. There will be occasions that the majority perspective truth is also used by the narcissist against you, so that you both agree this is what has happened. But the narcissist only accepts that as the truth because it accords with what the narcissist requires, the assertion of control, fuel, etc. So, for instance, you shouted at the narcissist. That took place. You know that it did. The narcissist uses your majority perspective of the truth of the fact that you shouted at him against you. You shouted at me yesterday. That really upset me. You're a horrible person. You did shout at that person. You did shout at the narcissist. The narcissist is recalling correctly that you shouted at them. And therefore, your truth is also being used by the narcissist. But it's only a convenient truth to the narcissist, because the convenience is that your truth can be used by the narcissist as his truth also, to assert control over you by reprimanding you for shouting at him, asserting control over you and drawing fuel from you. Now, let's move it on a little into the realms of the half-truth. The reason that you shouted at the narcissist was because he had just gone and smashed your greenhouse containing your prize orchids. So your response of shouting was as a consequence of the behaviour of the narcissist. So whilst you recognise that it might be unpleasant to shout at somebody, you also recognise that it was justified as a consequence of the way that the narcissist had behaved towards you. However, the narcissist says to you, "You shouted at me yesterday. That wasn't nice at all. You should say sorry to me and be ashamed of yourself." So the narcissist is digging up the past, bringing up the past, something that had occurred yesterday. It's being done because it's a narcissist that's using it to manipulate you, to assert control over you, to gain fuel from you. Of course, you would respond with, "The only reason I shouted at you was because you trashed my greenhouse." When you say that, you are of course threatening the narcissist's control by the issuing of challenge fuel. And the narcissism may well operate so the narcissist goes, "That didn't happen, you just lashed out at me." It's as if the truth has been edited. So some of it is truth, it's a half-truth. You did shout at the narcissist, however you did so because the narcissist had trashed your greenhouse. But in order to reject the threat to control caused by your explanation for your behaviour, the narcissism edits the film, if you will, cutting out their behaviour and making it just about the fact that you shouted. In other instances, as you'll have experienced, there is a grain of truth, but it's twisted, it's altered, it's embellished or diminished in some way. So in some instances, the narcissist uses the truth as you understand it to be against you. So there is a usage by both parties of the majority perspective truth. In other instances, the narcissist makes use of the half-truth, not telling the full story, missing parts out or adding to them, twisting them, altering the narrative, because from the narcissist perspective, where you're dealing with an unaware narcissist, that is how, at that moment, the narcissism causes them to perceive as how it actually happened. The narcissism edits the tape, cuts out their behaviour of smashing up the greenhouse, and all that actually happened was you shouted at the narcissist. The film starts halfway through. And the narcissism edits that in the moment, utilising a half-truth, although it's seen as the full truth by the narcissist, to compel him to assert control over you and draw fuel from you. And then finally, we have nowhere near the truth. And this is where the narcissist says something that just didn't happen. So you didn't shout at the narcissist yesterday. But the narcissist says that you did. Because the narcissism alters his memory, alters his perspective in that moment to cause him to believe that you did shout yesterday, so that he's utterly convinced of that, so that the lie that he tells, he believes is his truth. And again, that unaware narcissist, in that moment, and 2 minutes later it can all change, but in that moment, honestly believes that you did shout yesterday, and says the lie as his truth with utter conviction. From your majority perspective, no such shouting ever occurred. There's no record of it, you know it didn't happen, but that doesn't matter, because the narcissist, compelled by his narcissism, honestly believes that you did shout, and therefore throws that against you. So it is important for you to understand that the truth as you understand it is the truth from your perspective, and is invariably shared by many billions of other people who have evolved in a similar way to you, so that they shared an evolved majority perspective of the truth. The narcissist sits outside of that. The truth, according to the narcissist, can be the same majority perspective truth as yours if it suits the narcissist's needs for control and fuel, etc., or an edited version, the half-truth or the twisted truth, or a completely fabricated truth, i.e. a lie, and nowhere near the truth. And that's what makes it very difficult at times for victims, because not only do you have to get your mind around that concept, but the fact that we, in a way, almost dip in and out of the truth as you understand it, sometimes agreeing with it, according with it, and you think, well, he can see what's going on this occasion, why can't he on this other occasion? And it really makes for a bewildering headfuck for you. Commonly, this can happen where you might talk about the behaviour of the third party, pointing out the unpleasant behaviour, and the narcissist agrees with you. And you think, well, the narcissist can see that behaviour in somebody else. Why can he never see it in himself? The reason being, of course, to admit that he does it would be to relinquish control or to allow a threat to his control, and the narcissism won't allow that to happen. So a narcissist can commonly call somebody else a narcissist, point out bad behaviour of somebody else, but will never accept it themselves because the narcissism won't allow it. And that's what occurs with the unaware narcissist. With the aware narcissist, we know that we're telling the lie, but we simply don't care. And we see that the truth is entirely malleable, that it can be stretched, edited, turned around, inverted. And similarly, the aware narcissist can use the same truth as yours should the needs accord, or will quite happily twist it, or quite happily invent it, but doesn't care. And that type of narcissist has evolved in a way to be able to do that, still with complete conviction. The unaware narcissist has to believe the lie, because if they didn't, they would hesitate, they'd be too slow to effect the control, and therefore the narcissism would fail. The narcissism of an aware narcissist operates in a different way to enable that narcissist to assert control with utter conviction, even though we know that we're telling a lie, hence the distinctions. So it's important to realise that although you will repeatedly get upset and worked up about the fact that the narcissist is telling lies, what you have to remember is the truth as you understand it is a generally majority perspective accepted truth. But there's no such thing as an objective truth. And the narcissist operates in an alternative truth, an alternative reality, for the purposes of achieving the prime aims. And this is a fundamental step that needs to be understood. You, of course, don't have to like it, and indeed you may well see it as absolutely fucking crazy. But the point is, you need to understand it to help you understand the way that the narcissist operates, and to avoid yourself getting drawn into a situation of the truth being used against you, the half-truth being used against you, and nowhere near the truth being used against you. I'm H.G. Tudor. Thank you for listening.